Think back to everything you learned in school: algebra, the periodic table, the causes of World War I, Shakespeare, photosynthesis. Now ask yourself, did anyone ever sit you down and explain how a bank account actually works? Did anyone walk you through what a tax bracket means, or why a credit score follows you for the rest of your life? Did anyone ever explain what an asset is versus a liability? And why that single distinction is the difference between financial freedom and financial stress for decades? No, they didn't, and that wasn't an accident. My name is Sloan. Today, we're going to talk about why schools don't teach you about money. Not because the subject is too complicated, but because of something far more deliberate. And by the end of this video, I want you to walk away not just informed, but genuinely shifted in the way you see your financial life. Because once you understand the system you were raised inside, you can finally start to step outside of it. Stay with me. This one matters. Most people assume the public school system exists to educate children. And on the surface, yes, children learn things. They read, they do math, they study history. But here's what most people never question: who designed the system, and what were they actually trying to produce? Because if you trace the modern public school model back to its roots, you don't end up at a philosopher's study or a child development lab. You end up in 18th century Prussia. In 1717, King Frederick William I of Prussia established one of the first compulsory, state-mandated schooling systems in the world. And it was built with one explicit goal: to produce loyal, obedient, patriotic soldiers. Not thinkers, not entrepreneurs, soldiers. The design reflected that intention completely. Children sat in rows, facing forward, for long stretches of time. Bells told them when to move. Standardized tests measured whether they could follow instruction accurately. Questioning authority was not encouraged. Conformity was the entire point. The system was essentially a factory, and the product was a compliant citizen who would follow orders without hesitation, whether on a battlefield or in a barracks. Now, here's where it gets closer to home. Around 1840, an American educator named Horace Mann traveled to Prussia and witnessed this model firsthand. He came back to the United States convinced that this was exactly what the growing nation needed. He campaigned loudly for it. He won over wealthy industrialists, people who had a direct financial interest in creating a reliable, large-scale workforce. By 1900, virtually every state in America had adopted compulsory public schooling modeled on the Prussian blueprint. But the goal had shifted slightly. In Prussia, they wanted soldiers. In the United States, the industrial era needed something different. They wanted workers, not entrepreneurs, not inventors, not independent thinkers who might one day build their own companies or question the economic structures they were born into. Workers, employees, people who would show up on time, follow a manager's directions, collect a paycheck, and do it again for 40 years until retirement. And in 1913, almost as if it were planned in sequence, the 16th Amendment was ratified, giving the federal government the power to collect income tax for the first time in American history. An entire nation of employees had been created, and now there was a mechanism to take a portion of every paycheck they earned for the rest of their working lives. Schooling, employment, taxation, three systems built within decades of each other, working in perfect alignment. If this is already shifting how you see things, drop a comment below with just one word: awake. I read every single one, and I want to know this is landing. Now, I want to be fair here because schools do teach children genuinely useful things. Reading and writing are foundational. Basic mathematics matters. Understanding history and science shapes how we engage with the world. I'm not dismissing any of that. But there's a concept in education called the hidden curriculum. The values, habits, and assumptions that children absorb, not from what they're explicitly taught, but from how they're taught and what is left out entirely. And the hidden curriculum of the modern school system is this: your job is to comply, perform, and qualify. Think about how grades work. You are given information, you memorize it, you reproduce it on a test, you are ranked against other students. The student who can absorb and repeat information most efficiently gets the highest marks. That student is rewarded, praised, and held up as the model. Now ask yourself, what does that train you to do in adult life? It trains you to be an excellent employee, to receive instructions, execute them accurately, and seek approval from those above you. And that is the entire grade school experience, translated directly into workplace behavior. And here's what's deliberately left out of that education: how money compounds over time, how debt is structured to work against the borrower, how taxes actually function and what legal strategies exist within the tax code, how to read a financial statement, what it means to own equity in something, how to build a second income stream, how businesses generate profit and what drives valuation. None of it. 12 or more years of mandatory education, and the average graduate enters adulthood with zero functional financial knowledge. This isn't a gap in the curriculum, it's a feature of it. Because if students graduated with a deep understanding of how money works, how wealth is built, and how financial systems operate, a meaningful percentage of them would look at a 40-year employment contract and ask, is this actually the best use of my one life? And when people start asking that question seriously and have the tools to act on it, they stop being predictable employees. They start building things. They start owning things. And that changes the economic math for everyone at the top of the system who depends on a steady, unquestioning labor force. Financial ignorance isn't a side effect of the school system. In many respects, it is the product. So if school didn't teach us how money works, what are the things we actually needed to learn? Let me walk you through what I consider the foundational rules of money. These aren't secrets. They're not complicated. But they are things that most people spend decades figuring out through painful trial and error, when they could have learned them at 17 Rule 1. One income is one oxygen tube. The most financially vulnerable position you can be in is complete dependence on a single paycheck. Not because working a job is wrong, but because a single income stream gives you zero margin if anything disrupts it. A layoff, a health emergency, an industry shift, one variable changes and everything is at risk. The financially stable people I've studied and learned from are almost never people with the highest salaries. They're people with multiple income streams, even small ones. A job plus a small side business. Employment income plus a modest investment portfolio generating dividends. A professional skill plus freelance consulting on the side. The goal isn't to become a millionaire overnight. The goal is to stop being completely exposed. 2 income streams doesn't double your security. It multiplies it because you've broken the dependency. The hidden cost of a single income isn't just financial vulnerability. It's psychological. When your entire livelihood depends on one employer's goodwill, you can never truly negotiate freely. You can never walk away from a bad situation with confidence. You are, in a very real sense, always at someone else's mercy. Over time, this creates a life that feels stable on the surface but is fundamentally fragile underneath. Rule 2. The difference between an asset and a liability is the entire game. This is perhaps the most important financial concept that exists, and it was never once mentioned in 12 years of schooling. An asset puts money into your pocket over time. A liability takes money out. That's it. That's the whole distinction. But the implications are enormous. Most of what people spend money on when they feel like they've made it, bigger cars, luxury subscriptions, designer items, upgraded apartments before the income supports it. These are liabilities. They feel good. They signal success. but they are quietly draining your financial position every month. Assets, by contrast, are things that generate a return. A small investment portfolio, a business you own a stake in, a skill that commands premium fees in a market, intellectual property that earns royalties, even a modest rental property or a digital product that sells while you sleep. The reason most people stay on the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle isn't income, it's the ratio. When all of your money flows toward liabilities and none toward assets, you will always need the next paycheck, no matter how large it becomes. This is why people earning six figures can still live with financial anxiety. It's not the number, it's the structure. Rule 3. Your income depends on the value you create, not the hours you work. Here's a reframe that took me a long time to genuinely internalize. The economic value of any work is not determined by how hard you work or how long you work. It's determined by how many people need what you can do, how few other people can do it, and how large the impact is when it's done well. A brain surgeon and a ditch digger both work physically demanding jobs, but the market assigns radically different values to those two skills, not because of fairness, but because of scarcity, demand, and impact. This means the most powerful financial move any person can make is to continuously increase the value of what they offer the market. That might be through developing rare skills, building a reputation in a specialized niche, creating something, a product, a platform, a piece of content that scales beyond the hours you personally put in. When you shift from thinking, how do I earn more per hour, to how do I create more value per output, your entire financial trajectory changes. Rule 4. Time is more valuable than money, but most people sell it too cheaply. Money lost can be recovered, time cannot. This is why the wealthiest individuals and companies in the world invest heavily in systems, teams, and technology that create leverage, meaning their output is no longer directly tied to the number of hours they personally work. An entrepreneur who builds a business that functions without their constant presence has created leverage. An investor whose portfolio generates returns while they sleep has created leverage. A creator whose content continues to be viewed and generate income years after it was made has created leverage. The average person trades time for money at a fixed rate. 40 hours of work for 1 week's pay. Stop working, stop earning. That is not financial freedom. That is a sophisticated form of dependency. The question isn't how much are you earning per hour. The question is, what are you building that earns without you? I want to pause here and ask, if you're finding this genuinely useful, please share this video with one person in your life who you think needs to hear it. Not for me. For them. This is the conversation that nobody has with us growing up, and it needs to spread. And this is where the real problem becomes clear. Most people are not struggling financially because they are lazy. Most people are not broke because they lack intelligence. I want to be very clear about that because financial shame is one of the most damaging and unproductive forces in people's lives. People are struggling because they were handed a map for a destination nobody actually told them they were going to. They were trained to be excellent employees in a world that rewards ownership. They were taught to memorize information in a world that rewards the ability to apply it. They were raised to find security in a single paycheck in an economy where that paycheck is increasingly fragile. The education system didn't fail them by accident. It succeeded at its original purpose, producing compliant, employable workers. The failure is that nobody told that to the students sitting in those classrooms. And here's what changes everything: awareness. The moment you understand the system you are operating inside, you stop being defined by it. You can audit your own financial behaviors, not with shame, but with clarity. You can ask, am I making decisions based on financial intelligence or based on the habits and assumptions I absorbed without ever questioning them? That question is where every real financial journey begins. People who build genuine financial stability over time don't necessarily earn the most, but they almost always do a few things consistently that the average person doesn't. They live on less than they earn, not as a temporary sacrifice, but as a permanent identity. The gap between income and spending is where wealth is created. No gap, no wealth. It's that simple. Lifestyle expansion that outpaces income growth destroys financial progress no matter what the income level is. They invest in themselves before they invest in anything else. A new skill that opens a higher-paying market. A book that reframes how you see financial decisions. A mentor or community that accelerates your learning. These are returns that compound in ways a savings account never will. They understand the tax system well enough to use it legally and intelligently. Taxes are not fixed. Within every tax code, there are legal structures that reward certain behaviors: business ownership, investment, specific savings vehicles. The people who understand these structures keep more of what they earn. The people who don't pay the maximum. They are patient in a world that celebrates speed. The most powerful financial tool available to almost everyone, compound growth over time, only works if you give it time to work. The investor who starts at 25 with modest contributions and leaves them alone will almost always outperform the investor who starts at 40 with larger sums and chases short-term returns. And perhaps most importantly, they separate their identity from their appearance of wealth. The cars and the clothes, the constant signals of status. These are the financial decisions of people who are performing wealth rather than building it. The people who are quietly and genuinely accumulating financial security often look completely ordinary from the outside because they're not spending on appearances, they're spending on assets. So, what do you actually do with all of this? Start with awareness before action. Spend 1 month genuinely tracking where your money goes. Not to judge yourself, to understand your current pattern. You cannot improve what you haven't measured. Then identify one liability you can reduce and redirect that money toward one asset. Even a small one. A low-cost index fund. A course that builds a marketable skill. A savings buffer that stops you from borrowing in emergencies. Commit to learning one new financial concept per month. Compound interest. How index funds work. What a Roth IRA or pension equivalent is in your country. How business expenses work. These aren't complicated once you engage with them. And each one gives you more agency over your own financial life. And stop waiting for the right income level to start. Financial intelligence is not a luxury available only at high incomes. It is a discipline that shapes how any income grows or evaporates. The habits you build at a modest income scale when your income grows. The habits you don't build now will follow you upward and undo every raise you ever receive. The goal isn't to get rich fast. The goal isn't to look wealthy while being financially fragile underneath. The goal is to build a financial life that is genuinely difficult to break. One where a single job loss doesn't mean catastrophe, where your money is quietly working while you sleep, and where the decisions you make today are giving you more freedom, not less. School taught you how to earn, but nobody sat you down and taught you how to own. That changes now. If you've made it to the end of this video, I genuinely believe you're someone who takes this seriously. And that's exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Subscribe to Sloan Invests right now, because every single week we break down one more thing the school system never covered. No jargon, no gatekeeping, just the financial education that should have been mandatory. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.